getting started, it was like most people were pretty nice about it. They're like, "Oh, it's nice. You're like, see what you're doing this, and like see your improvements as you're making videos and all this stuff." And then some people would just be like, "Dude, your pictures suck."
Yeah.
And I'm like, I'm just showing my process. Like,
Right.
I know it sucks. And then like I would get annoyed at first, and then as I got further on, I was like, I'm not really going to engage them that much, or I'd engage them in like maybe a nicer reply somehow. But their hateful engagement is engagement,
Right.
and YouTube doesn't see it
100%.
in like all those different ways. They're just like, oh, this person's talking to them, so I'll show them more videos.
Right.
Like, or I'll show their, people like them more videos of it as well. So I was just like, okay, this is their opinion, whatever.
Well, that's what I learned from, like I did one podcast with my friend and, photographer in North Carolina, and we kind of had the strategy just because we wanted to. And I just don't think that, my opinion wasn't, we weren't highlighting certain anomalies in the industry. I mean, maybe we are. And it's just, I just appreciated like a number of different photographers, and I just want to talk about them. And so we what did we say? We called it the Inspiration Edition Vibrant Podcast or whatever. And the first episode, it was like, I picked a photographer, she picked a photographer, and we would kind of go through their portfolios and talk about the things that we liked and all that. And so we went through Sam Hurd, and I'm like, this is why he's amazing. This is like the stuff that inspires me, why it inspired me. It's like, and yeah, it's like, I've come a long way and everything, but it's like when do you remember the first time you saw a prisming photo?
No.
Oh, shoot.
I don't think so.
I
remember sometime around 2017.
Yeah.
I saw it like in like an Instagram feed somewhere, and I didn't know who Sam Hurd was until after 2020.
Oh, word. Yeah. I think I first found Sam at like 2017.
Yeah.
Give or take. And I saw some photo, I think it was a Brazil wedding, and then he was doing lens chimping, what we now know as lens chimping. Mm-hmm. And that was so mind blowing to me. It like completely, like I had to figure it out.
Yeah.
And so we made a whole podcast, the first one was about Sam Hurd, and so far that was the only one I published, but I ended up getting comments of people criticizing Sam's work.
Yeah. Are we recording already?
Yeah, we are.
Oh, great.
Yeah.
I didn't realize we started.
No, people were like, you were talking. I'm like, no, I'm just going to hit record. So like,
fair enough. It's probably the best way to go.
Right. Well, it's like, yeah. So people were just criticizing Sam's work. And I was like, that's fair that you don't like it, and they like, I think they called it not timeless or not classic or whatever. I'm like, well, when you're looking for a modern artistic photographer, like modern photographer, like timeless and modern aren't necessarily synonymous.
Yeah.
So, and then, so I tried to take I'm a verbal processor. So I regurgitated all my thoughts in like a paragraph on YouTube. And then my criticisms on those comments were, this guy has word salad. I'm like, I just can't type as fast as I can think is the problem.
Yeah.
But it was like, it was fascinating that the majority of the comments we got like probably 6 comments, was like the negative stuff, but it created it made me want to comment on it, and then they would respond, and then it's like the feedback loop, like the internet loves that.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I cannot get sucked into a negative feedback loop.
Right.
Like I'll talk to someone about gear, about something, a process, if it's like civil.
Yeah.
And once it takes a turn, like the last time that I got engaged in something like this, it was completely accidentally because I didn't realize it was negative at first. I made a reel like at the start of 2024, and it was about Canon's 50mm lens lineup because they did not have a 51.4 that was not too heavy and weather sealed. Yep. And someone, I was like, just make something in between. Yeah. Like of an RF mount, because I'm aware there's other things. I used to have a Sigma lens.
There's a million other things.
It's bigger. The Sigma lens was longer. It was heavier at the front. What didn't come in a small, light, compact lens that's weather sealed. And someone's like, just do your research. There's so many different 50mm options out there that can do what you want it to do. And I was like, please direct me in the direction of that, because there is no RF mount, autofocus, weather sealed, small-ish, light-ish 50mm lens that's like not the 1.2, not the 1.8. Yep. I would be happy with a weather sealed 1.8 that was sturdy. Yep. Because
1.8 is not weather sealed. You're right.
Yeah, and it's got more. I mean, it's not flimsy, but it's compared to the 1.2, it's flimsy.
Yeah. Because it's
So
like,
we got in this whole thing, and eventually it got actually like quite aggressive, and I was like,
no.
I just can't like. I was like, I'm just gonna block this person
Yeah.
because I'm kind of sucked into the argument
Yep.
because he couldn't back up what he was telling me,
Right.
and then he's giving me a harder time for being like, just do your research, like spend some time
Right.
on the internet. I'm like,
Right.
I've done all the things.
Yeah. Right. It's like, and then you're like, hey, you didn't even listen to what I was actually saying.
Yeah. And that wasn't the point. It wasn't even really about 50 millimeters. It was about all of the range. There's a 35 1.8.
Right.
And there's an EF 35 1.4.
Uh-huh.
And the EF 35 1.4 is big. Adapt it to an R, and it's even bigger.
Yep.
So I just something in between that's weather sealed that can take a beating.
And then the 35 1.4 now has, I'm going to call it strange. Like,
Yeah.
whatever they're doing to try and kind of do this video hybrid, I hypothesize that they're making these lenses that require lens correction, and they do internal lens correction for video, I guess.
Yeah.
But it's like, it's an extra step in post-processing. And you don't have to make it an extra step. You can have your settings applied on import. It's like, but I'm like, I run everything through Aftershoot before I run it through Lightroom.
Yeah.
Bring it into Lightroom. Or it's like, well, I bring it into Lightroom, then I run Aftershoot, and then I kind of do the thing. I'm applying metadata that overrides the things that I would import it with anyways.
Yeah.
So it depends on the workflow.
Mm-hmm.
And it's obnoxious. I'm like, why can't we have just a beautiful lens that, yeah, I'm fine if it needs lens correction if you want to remove like vignetting or something, but it's like the distortion on
It's wild.
L series lens is like ridiculous.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe I'm just like, I miss whatever Canon was trying to accomplish with it.
Yeah.
But it's like, somebody needs to tell me what the point is of these things.
Yeah. I mean, in my mind, I was always like, I think they're just trying to make it corner to corner sharp.
Right.
And with as little vignetting or perceived flaws as possible. But a lot of people like a bit of distortion.
Yeah.
Just like
Character.
Like, yeah. Yeah.
If I wanted perfection, I would buy Sigma lenses.
Are they? I don't even know if they're perfection.
Dude, the sharpness is ridiculous.
Yeah.
I've seen people's criticism of Sigma lenses be that it's almost too clinical or too surgical. Like there's no necessarily color character. It's like the corners are generally sharper than most other stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Sigma's
that's true. I had the 35 1.4 for
Yeah.
like my first like professional lens.
Yeah.
And yeah, it seemed great, but I had nothing else to compare
reference
it
it,
against. Yeah.
Well, the Sigma 50 1.4 was my go-to 50 for the longest time because I did like order of operations. Well, when I switched from Nikon to Canon, it's like I skipped the 50 1.8 and I went straight to the 1.4, which to your point, it would be great if we had an RF 1.4. So it's like, because the 1.4 was the go-to for a while, but you needed to shoot that thing at like 2.0, 2.2 to like get some level of usable sharpness.
Yeah.
And this is on DSLRs, and this is like the 5D Mark II era. So focus is not your strong suit anyways, at least by today's standards.
Yeah.
So so I switched to the Sigma 50 1.4, and that was my workhorse for grand majority of years.
Yeah.
It's like until we finally went RF mount, and then I got the 50 1.2, and I will never look back.
Yeah, it's such a good lens.
It's
really good.
Amazing. Because I tried the 50 EF 1.2. Like I've gone through 6 of them, and only
really?
2 were usable with their sharpness.
Jeez.
Is like hot take here, but I'm like, I can't stand the EF 50 1.2.
Wow.
It's like the chromatic aberration. It's like it's which I'm fine with a little bit. Like again, I love character, but it's like I'm barely shooting at 2.2 and I can use it. It's like It was, at least that was my experience. I know but the fact that it was an inconsistent lens, and I've tried like my friends and I rented stuff, and it just never landed for me. So then when the 50 RF came out, I was like, this is a breath of fresh air.
Yeah.
He finally got something right, which I'm like, I guess the 50 is like what, a 25-year-old design at this point.
Yeah, it's old.
Yeah, the 1.2. It's sure. But I still haven't tried the 1.0.
Yeah, me neither.
Even though it's like $6,000.
Yeah, I'm not getting one at this point.
I would love.
It'd be fun to try, but like the first time I ever heard of it, I think they were about 3,000 something.
Yeah.
And I was like, it's too expensive.
And then now they're twice that.
More than that, yeah.
Yeah, at least. It's so ridiculous, man.
Yeah. I'll stick with the ones that I can like justify.
Right.
Saying that, I never say never. I'll always, once I get something in my mind, if I'm like, maybe I'll just try it. And then I'll just like, I'll focus on getting that for a long time until I've got it. And then usually what happens is I get it, I try it for a while, and I'm like, okay, it's not ideal for my day-to-day thing that I'm trying to do, and maybe just use it like occasionally for portraits or something. Like that's what lenses end up being.
Right.
In my bag, like this one just does this thing. And like 90% of the time, there's like one or two lenses that you end up using.
Well, that's why I said, like, I got an 85, and then a friend of mine has it right now because I just never use it.
Yeah.
It's like I wanted so hard to try and be an 85 guy, for a minute.
Yeah.
And it's like
talking about 85 millimeters and Canon lens things. My hot take on Canon 85 millimeters is the EF 85 1.8 with the gold ring on it.
Yeah.
They made it in 1993, and they haven't made a better 85 millimeter since then.
No way.
In my opinion, like there's ones technically better.
Yeah.
There's ones with image stabilization,
friend
maybe sharper and all that sort of stuff. But I've had two 85 1.8s, and I've fiddled around with plenty of other. I've the Sigma 85, beautiful, far too big.
Yeah.
The Canon 85 1.4 with image stabilization.
EF?
Also, EF, yeah.
EF, yeah.
That isn't that old. Also beautiful, far too big.
Yep.
I thought it was going to be significantly smaller than the 85 1.2. I think it was longer and maybe a little bit lighter, but the 85 1.2, far too big. And also not super quick focusing. And I think just the way I shoot, I tend to need something
radically fast focus.
I need something that can focus relatively quickly. The Samyang 85 1.4, disgusting to use.
EF or RF?
EF.
EF. Okay.
No. Sorry, was it RF? It was an RF.
Okay, because I have the EF version of that. That's the one I got.
There was like it had a chattery aperture, like really noisy. And I just absolutely hated the sound of it, which is not really a reason to dislike a lens.
Right.
But it had like a startup problem. Maybe it was my copy, but like, when your camera like goes to sleep for a second, and then you like tap the shutter button and it's back straight away.
Yep.
This lens would like come up with the manual focus boxes for like 3 seconds, and then the lens would catch up and be like, okay, we're focusing. And I was just like, I was missing stuff because of the like slight lag.
Yeah.
So I got rid of that, and I had the 85 1.8 a while ago.
Yeah.
Got rid of it because it got old and it was full of dust and wasn't really performing like it used to. And I bought another one new, and it was much better. But I just found that my process had moved more into that 50 millimeter range, so I just didn't find myself using it as much.
Well, because I had I've gone through probably 4 Samyang 14 millimeters. Mm-hmm. It's like a couple of them I think were RF, and then I dropped one, and so it shattered. I'm like, oh, so disappointed, sad. And then so I sent in my second one because I think I also dropped that one. And then but they couldn't send me another RF because they discontinued, because I guess Canon cease and desisted them or something. Yeah. It's like because the autofocus and the mount licensing, I don't know, which is incredibly frustrating to me.
Yeah.
Which is to your point for the 1.4 RF situation for the 50. It's like, if Canon's not going to fill these gaps, it's like, and then make us adapt everything to kind of get something remotely close to what we're hoping for. It's kind of an awkward time. It's like the best time to be a photographer and like an awkward time to be at least a Canon shooter anyways.
I mean, I'd also, sorry if you weren't
done. No, go ahead.
There's like, when I think about it, like RF, when did that come out? Like 2018?
Yeah,
or something like that.
That sounds right.
So like that, it's been 7 years.
I thought that was yesterday.
Yeah, it's been 7 years, which seems like a long time. People are like, where are these ones? And like, I'm saying that I'm criticizing them for all these things, but look at when they released the first 35 1.4 for EF in 1999, like the L series one, and they released EF in like 1989 or 88 or something. Like it was
10 years.
It was long time before that, and then they slowly fill it out. They filled that range out over 30 years.
Right.
So there's all those lenses there over 30 years, and like the way that I'm almost like, why don't they have all of the lenses right now?
Right.
Like I'm like impatient for like everything. When they're obviously going to take time to fill out all these things in the lineup.
It's like, is it fair to give them the time, or is it fair to say, hey, we live in a different time, and you should, at least if you're not going to let us have these lenses that you manufacture, don't clamp down so hard on all these other companies, but then that cannibalizes their own business, which I get.
But I think it only cannibalizes it to a certain extent.
It
like
only, right.
Like someone who's not going to buy the RF 51.2, they're not going to buy that. They'll adapt. You can adapt EF lenses onto it. So all of the third-party EF lenses that can be adapted are still really like
amazing.
Great.
Yeah, 100%.
Like half of the lenses I've got are still EFs, and
right.
they perform just as well as the RFs.
It's amazing. It almost increases their performance, like from an autofocus perspective.
Wild.
It's amazing. Which to the point of the I was going to with the Samyang is I got a 14 back from Samyang, and it was saying it was manual focus when it was autofocus, and I was having all sorts of issues, and I was trying to go back and forth with them, and I had this actually pretty long saga because I sent it in, I got it back, and I had the same problem and all these things, and I was like, this is incredibly frustrating. Like, oh, it's your problem, your camera. So I put it on all these different cameras. I got friends' cameras. I put it on EF mount cameras, and I'm like, see,
same thing.
The problem's here on the whole thing, and they're like, okay, fine. So, and then they, sent it back, and ultimately I did get one that was actually working, and it was really frustrating. But your 85 problem with Samyang, I'm really curious if I get my 85 back from my friend and let you use that, because I haven't had the same problems, and I stuck my 85 on my camera. That was the Samyang, to show them, like, see, I love your lenses. They work.
Yeah,
they work on this camera, but the 14 doesn't work on this camera.
Yeah,
and the 14 doesn't work on all these other cameras.
Yeah, it's
and
interesting.
Then eventually they conceded, and then I got lens back. It's like it was a little difficult to kind of pull that, but ultimately I was happy with them, and I was not happy with them for a little while, but I still miss my 14 millimeter Samyang RF.
Yeah,
because the distortion is different. It's a different lens, the RF14, and I loved that lens, and how it was lighter too, because it didn't have the adapter, which is another problem. Canon, one of the big sells when we were going to mirrorless was the smaller lighter factor, and here we are with the, my favorite 51.2 gigantic heavy lens, or the 28 to 70 if you have that, which I don't, but
that was one of the other things that people, the sort of negative comments on that, on the 50 millimeter video reel that I was talking about earlier. One or two people were like, you can't change physics.
Right.
You want fast glass, you're going to have a bigger lens.
Right.
I understand that. But have you seen the EF 51.2?
Uh-huh.
That's fast glass with a bigger lens.
Very small.
I think what happened was the old cameras were fatter. They were thicker, like front to back.
Yeah. Yep.
Probably because of the mirror.
So the flange distance being,
So the flange distance was different. So physics means that probably you need a longer lens there.
Yeah.
Then I'm like, 51.8 is still pretty small.
It's tiny.
So, can you just make a fat version of the 51.8 and have it still the same length? Like, have it still be roughly the same length? There's definitely going to be some sort of image quality trade-offs, maybe autofocus trade-offs. I don't really know. But and this is what a lot of people are like, just go to Sony, dude. Just go to Sony, because they've got relatively small prime lenses on their things, and
they do. I am jealous of Sony's lens selection.
Yeah, they invested in mirrorless
but
years
they're
before.
also not shutting down all of these third-party lens manufacturers from being able to make autofocus stuff on their
options.
Right, and I'm like, that is a big sell.
Yeah.
And I've edited Sony files, the raw files, and I was really impressed and being like, dang, I love editing these files. It's annoying to hold.
That's exactly why I don't have one. It's exactly the same reason. And I don't even using Canon is I don't love it, but it's ergonomically sound.
Yeah.
And I have muscle memory with it.
Yep.
When I
100%.
get a new camera, even going from the 5D Mark IV to the R6,
Yeah.
pretty much the same.
Right.
Different, like slightly different size in my hand,
Yeah.
but like the buttons did the same thing, and the customization was roughly similar. So like I just had no problem moving to that.
Well, I had another friend. He ran real estate photography company, and he would train his photographers with Sony not to delete photos. It was me. It was my notification went off. But he would train his people to not delete any images off a Sony camera, because Sony would inevitably, if you deleted one, it would delete one on each side of that file you deleted.
Oh.
And it was, not something that you could, adjust, like account for.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, okay, that's a big red flag.
Yeah, that's wild.
For specifically for, running that sort of company, trying to train photographers and all that stuff. And I'm like, that's annoying. But then the big killer for me, and the reason I have not considered Sony, even though like I love probably their video more than every other manufacturer, is like the look of their video, is you can't do double exposures.
Oh yeah. You can't do the in-camera.
Yeah, you can't do in-camera double exposures.
I even think, I don't know why Canon have, I think, crippled that in every camera after the R6 Mark 1. Because do you have a Mark 1 and a Mark 2?
I have the Mark 1, just the Mark 1.
Just I thought you had a Mark 2 as
They
well.
crippled in the Mark 2?
So I think, so even with like the R3, when you do double exposure, it only saves a JPEG.
JPEG, yeah, that's a problem.
Whereas the R6 was the last one, it'll save a RAW file with a double exposure.
That's crazy. Dude, this continues my escapade to say the R6 is the best camera.
Yeah.
Not the Mark II. That's like they changed the way the autofocus works, and it's like I still need somebody to sit down, handhold me to show me how I can get the face tracking servo autofocus with a starting center dot that I can choose what I start with, because it's the kind of the best of the one shot center focus thing that I had from the 5D 2, 3, 4, but it also has servo face tracking autofocus, and it's ridiculously good. And a friend of mine got an R6 Mark II, and I could not make the camera do the same thing. And I'm like, this is super dumb. This is the reason the R6 is so radically amazing, is the way the options it gives you for autofocus. And they took that option away. But if they're making the double exposures come out JPEG instead of RAW 2, it's like, what are they doing? And why are they making the R6 the best thing ever, the Mark 1?
Yeah. It doesn't make sense why they would take that functionality away.
Right.
Like it surely is only a software thing, whether it saves a RAW file or doesn't.
Right.
But
yeah,
anyways,
right. It has to be.
When you talk about the fun, it's I kind of made a reel about this last week. When you talk about like you held somebody else's R6 Mark II, and you couldn't make it do what you wanted to do.
Right.
I can. No other person, like I've never had another professional's camera in my hand that I've been able to use. Because the buttons are so like customizable.
Right.
And over the last 4 years, I've been like fiddling with my R6 once in a while, being like, I wonder if I can get this button to do this or this to do this, or is there a faster way for me to get from this focus mode to this focus mode? And you find all these things in the menu, and it's like, oh, I can just get rid of these things that I don't use. I can make this go to this button. That's going to transfer me to like this mode quicker.
Right.
And now I can do all these things without thinking about it. I just know where the button is. And if you hand me a factory Canon R6 or just any other professionals who have set theirs up, I can't shoot with it.
That's so funny.
Like I can set your exposure and stuff so like that, but like I don't feel like the camera is out of my way.
Yeah.
While I'm shooting with a camera that is not like my one.
Right. That's which you're, to be fair, when you photographed our family and you were showing me kind of how you had your setup, yours is customized out the butt. I've never seen, I don't think any camera as customized and set up to do the things that you're doing.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Like of all the people I've talked to, and everybody has their quirks and their idiosyncrasies and all the things that they do with their cameras. Yours is like, I mean, straight down to the fact that you like not glued, but adhered, a hook to be able to pull up the screen. I'm like, that is the most genius thing. And then I tried to think about it for my camera, and the amount of like I use the back screen against my camera so much that I can't do it because then it won't go and touch the screen. But it's like the fact that you just, and I'm like, I have fingernails for classical guitar, and so I have no problem getting in the screen and pulling that open. But it's like having a hook to access the screen is a genius idea.
I just find it saves me like a second and a half.
Yeah.
When I'm in the middle of like, so it's up in my eye, shooting like a first kiss at a wedding or something like that, little burst, and then they come to walk towards me, and I'm like, put the camera down, and I'm digging my thumb in that little nook to try and get the screen open, and I'm doing that, and if the screen's facing out, I'm doing that, and then I've got to twist it this way, and then I'm like shooting from the hip kind of thing. I just want to be able to go click and then shoot from the hip, like, and doing that was just a way faster motion. And I don't use the back screen.
It's
really.
almost, there's a kind of a line, I feel like, between photographers who don't customize their stuff and like they take everything stock and then they just show up and trust the way things are, and then photographers who have like the most Jimmy rigged stuff. Like, because you're saying about this, and I've never actually thought about this distinction, because it's like, when I, like, in my ascension into the career of photography, like, there's this guy, Vesic Photography. It's like, his name's Human. But I remember it's like, cause I hired him to do like me and my wife's 2nd year anniversary or whatever. And amazing photographer. And he had a bag, the shoulder bag that he used. And he was telling me how he had a tailor customize the bag. And it was this mind blowing moment for me of like, oh, if the tools aren't sufficient for my highly specific desires for how I can just change the tool. And I'm like, that was a kind of a mind blowing moment for me. And it's like, and that was what, like us too. So that was 9 years ago. It's like, and so I actually, I have the same exact bag, you know, that he found, and it was discontinued, and there's other bags that aren't quite like that one, because the way the partitions are to put the lenses in is just better than even the new versions of that bag. And in the back of it has like it's like RE something. I can't remember what it is. It's a gray one, but yeah, he's like, oh, this would be great if the pocket was just a pocket and it didn't open on the inside. And so he had that tailored, and then he had an additional pocket added onto him. Like, whoa, you can do that. Oh my God. And so there's kind of this, like, I'm feeling that reminiscently in what you're talking about and how you customize your cameras, because your cameras are way more customized than mine. It's like, but I kind of found a groove, and everybody kind of finds their groove, and some people have a different tolerance for where that's at. It's like, but it's a different kind of photographer, I think I'm noticing, who does that versus a photographer who just kind of takes whatever they like, all their stuff's pristine in factory set, and then they walk into the thing.
I mean, I think that even with, when I had DSLR still, I don't think things were nearly as customized as that was. The only thing I did did you have 5Ds?
I had 5D,
Yeah. So the 5D Mark 3 or 4, I realized that, you know, you had to like press the button on the top to change the ISO. So it was like a button press and then a roll.
So glad they have a dial for ISO.
So glad they have a dial for it.
My
but
God.
I realized I could, towards the end of having the DSLR, I realized I could hold the set button. You could set the set button to be ISO, and if you just pressed and hold it and rolled the shutter, it would change your ISO.
So you just switch, instead of using your pointer finger to your thumb?
So instead of going like, I guess the R6 doesn't really have the same thing, but like if this was the ISO button, you go like ISO roll, and then you can shoot.
So dumb.
Whereas you could change the set button,
so that you
like
hold it and then move
to change the ISO.
That's
so I'd
better.
hold it and roll, and I found that to be a little bit faster.
Let me see this. I just need everybody to see the fact that you have a hook on the back of your camera so that you can easily just open that up. Like, that is...
I didn't realize it was actually switched on.
Oh yeah, I didn't either, but and you have the QR code, and that's your business card?
Website,
Brilliant, dude. Oh my God. Like, that's everybody take note, because that's genius that he freaking, oh my God, man. And then so you use so my problem is then you can't close it.
You can't close it like that. Yeah. I never use it like that. I've always, not always, but like at some point I started, I think it was because of Sam Hurd, actually, because of the way he would like use the flip out screen to like do low portraits and stuff. Shortly after, I think I figured that out shortly after I got the R6. I was like, oh, that is a like good way to just quickly do a low angle shot instead of lying down in the grass.
100,000%.
And so I was like, oh, I can start doing that. And then after a while, I was not using the screen flipped out like that. So I was like, I need a better way to open it. So I just stuck that command hook on it and never really looked back. And sometimes if I like feel like I want to use it without it flipped out, I'll just leave it at that halfway shut thing and shoot it that way, but I very rarely do that for more than like 5 minutes.
What's funny is like, so I have Spider holster and I have the big ones, even though it's like they have smaller ones for mirrorless stuff. So mine is even harder to get, but I can because I have fingernails.
Yeah.
But it's like, no, that's pretty great.
And when you're holding it, so like I'd find like if you're holding it like that and as you like come around to get the screen, I barely have to move my hand. So it just kind of like as I'm shooting, my thumb just comes around, grabs it.
Oh, I see that.
And maybe I built a little muscle memory from it, just doing it.
No, 100%.
But like, I can go from there up in my eye to there, hip shooting, and I didn't have to think about the like hooking my finger in there, turning it like that,
right?
Or like what way is my screen currently? You know what I mean? Because if it's this way, you can get it a little quicker.
Yeah.
And it's not too bad. But if the last time you used it, you left it like that,
which
you then have to do a different turn.
I do that, yeah.
So it allowed me to just not really think about it.
That's brilliant.
I also just bought these big eye cups.
And I was taking note of that because mine are a little well loved, and I have like there's cracks in them and everything. But
do you ever like the reason for that is we're bouncing all over the place here, but I think that's fine.
Yeah. Also, we're kind of technically inclined, and so we're talking about things like differences between. It's funny
when you're shooting like family pictures, wedding party pictures, anything like that, and it's like 2 p.m.
Yeah,
and it's just blaring
yeah,
sun.
100%.
I always backlight them, so
Yep.
I'm looking at the sun.
Yeah,
and like seeing in the viewfinder is like I can't see
Yeah, you can't do
detail.
it, yeah.
I can't tell. Everybody looks like they're pitch black shadows.
yeah,
And it's probably one of the downsides of the EVF.
Right.
And I'm like, I just assume that I have the detail I need because
Yeah.
I'm used to just exposing for the highlights,
right.
and being like, literally they look like pitch black right now. I can't
100%.
see if someone's eyes are open. So like getting this little eye cup thing allowed me to just block out more sunlight and have like a slight better chance of seeing a little bit of shadow detail.
Well, I've become incredibly reliant on the autofocus to focus on those dark areas of the people, and then also doing it over and over and over again just to make sure you actually have safe focus on the subject, you know. But I remember I had Mark IIs for a long time, and then the Mark III came out, and then I was like, okay, let's see. So I rented the Mark III, and I'm like, the difference is so negligible to me.
Yeah.
It's not worth it. And then the Mark IV came out, and I was like, oh, completely different sensor, better dynamic range. What is even dynamic range? It's like, okay, thanks Sam Hurd for making, talks about that. And then I think what happened was the Nikon D750 came out, and I saw some British photographer's review of it. He's like a Nikon ambassador, and his shots at 8,000 ISO were so clean.
Yeah.
And he did a 5-stop underexposed to pull back for dynamic range, and that was kind of a really good indicator to me of what dynamic range actually was.
Yeah.
And I was so mind blown, and I was like, oh, I might have to switch to Nikon, back to Nikon, and the D750s. And I actually had a buddy who had D750s. Shout out Rob Tesser. There's just so many photographers I got to shout out. It's like, and he had D750s, and then when I went to the R came out, and then I got the R. I'm like, oh my gosh, great. It was basically the Mark IV in a mirrorless body. But when I got the Mark IV, I ran tests to do the thing. It's like, okay, so if I underexpose it, or if I shoot high ISO, or if I shoot C RAW, because they introduced C RAW, I think, on the Mark IV, it was negligible, and the dynamic range was so much better. Yeah. And I'm like, I can finally be like these guys who I keep watching, using, I guess Sam was using Nikon at the time, I believe. And then when the R came out, he switched to Canon mirrorless. My thoughts on my history with these cameras are in fact all over the place. Yeah. But after the Mark IV, and then I ran tests on the R, I'm like, yep, nope, it's done. The game's over. We have dynamic range again. And then the R, or like for the first time on a Canon camera, cause it was like, oh, color. And then nobody even knew what dynamic range even was. And then the R6 came out, and like, as long as it has dynamic range, I'm fine. Yeah. And it did. And I'm like, this is great. It's not as much as a Sony or a Nikon file, from my experience of pulling those back, but it's like, there is a question of how much do you actually need?
Oh, 100%.
Yeah. And it's like four stops, I think, is plenty good. Yeah. Shooting backlight, which was really funny because I was talking with a friend of mine. And I'm not going to mention his name because
more water.
Yeah, I would love more water, dude.
You can also just help yourself if you ever like don't feel like you need to ask.
Word.
Sorry, before we carried on deeper into that part of the convo.
I kind of like how cold this room is, but
Really?
yeah.
I have like a little space heater in the corner that.
Yeah, just posting podcasting with this guy. I just tagged you. But no, I am the worst at keeping updated on what's going on in my life in that moment.
This house is like so old and jerry rig remodeled that heat just does not distribute evenly. Yeah, I was thinking we could like move on to the topics, but
Yeah. Well, topics are probably a good idea to hit
yeah.
those.
Do you want to finish your start talking?
Oh,
about
my
your
thought.
friend?
Yeah, about my friend. And I won't say his name just because it involved having like a tizzy with a particular client.
Yeah.
But he was doing exactly what you just said. It's like he was putting the sun behind the client for a beach wedding. Because, okay, yeah, we're photographers. We think about, okay, bright sun in the face, squinty eyes, it's like sun behind, even light, maybe some pretty lens flare. And we love that. And mother of the bride was like, we talked for like an hour and a half about the difficulty he was having and with the mother of the bride just being so upset that he didn't put the sun in front of the family photos so that they were direct sunlight on the thing. And we were really just kind of talking about through the communication. She's like, hey, I want you to put the sun in front. And then, his response was like, I know what I'm doing. And I was like, okay, so first thing, you don't want to say that you want to invite them into your process of problem solving so that they can realize that you're the authority, not just tell them that you're the authority, kind of thing. Like, yeah, no, I can put the sun in front. The problem is we'll be dealing with squinty eyes and really harsh light. Or like, is that what you prefer? Because normally when I put the sun behind, then I have a nice lens flare and a really like, even lighting, soft lighting across the whole people, whatever, And then they go, okay, it's like, why don't we try both? And then that's usually my follow up, so people can then like feel part of the process and then realize all of the factors you're considering in a second. And then they're like, oh, you know what you're doing. Okay.
Yeah.
I want them to come to that conclusion. We're spending all this time talking about it. And he sent the photo to, somebody like, look, he's like, yeah, no, you're doing the best you can do and everything. And then I'm like, send me the photo. I want to see it. And after talking for an hour and a half through 2 hours about this photo and the difficulty, the photo looks incredible.
Yeah.
And I'm like, there is nothing wrong with this photo. This photo, like, this is better than some of the beach stuff I'm doing. This is like, bro, no, this person's ridiculous. It's like, this is an error in communication, not an error in bad photography. And I'm like, dude, freaking expectation. Establishing the expectation with a client is like more important than like whether your photos are good or bad.
Yeah.
It's crazy to me, because the photo is phenomenal. It's like, and normally I'm like, okay, yeah, if you have the really bright sunspot, you can put a, radial filter and then increase the dehaze. And it didn't need that. It looked fantastic. And I'm like, bro, but if you would have, like, if the conversation would have been like, okay, well, this is what I'm considering. Like, what do you think? And then they'd be like, oh, like, I trust you then. You know what you're doing, sun behind the thing.
Yeah.
Anyways, you want to go to our list and see what we have to talk about here?
One of the first thing on the list I put was like influences, because we started talking about people that influenced us and things like that, but
talked about my holy trinity of photographers.
Yeah, but like we didn't go like all that much deeper into it.
Right.
And also I noted it down as like influence versus copying.
Right.
Because that's been a thing like over the years, especially doing street
topic.
photography. When I did a lot of YouTube stuff, people talk about like, do you remember that app during the pandemic, Clubhouse?
I don't. Oh, no, I don't.
It was kind of like Twitter Spaces, I think. Twitter Spaces was like the copy of Clubhouse. We were just like people everyone's on lockdown, so they just go into these rooms and chat about topics.
I remember somebody talking about that, but I never jumped on that.
I used to go on this photography one all the time, and there would be a guy that regularly spoke and was like a professional photographer, but would speak in... I don't want to like disparage him because I didn't know this person, but he came off to me as like I don't know if condescending is the right word.
Pretentious, yeah.
Like pretentious, maybe, like as if he knew it all. And he said, and I don't look at anybody else's work. I don't look at other photographers' work. I don't study them. I don't pay attention to them.
Interesting.
And then I looked at his work, and I was like, I can see that you have spent no time studying photography. But he has like a professional career.
Right.
Fine. Like, yeah, like you've made some good connections. You've got work. You're doing some things.
Yeah.
And you're making a bunch of what I would call mediocre pictures.
Right.
Like they're exposed.
Right.
They're framed fine.
Right.
But they're just meh. There's nothing like,
right.
Like maybe, you know, I could see like maybe in the sports world, someone gets a half decent picture of them playing a sport and they're like, great, yeah, I'll buy that from that photographer,
right.
or would use that, or, you know.
Right. Well, okay,
like
so how successful was he?
I've no idea. Like, I just knew him from this room, and I looked up his page, and I'm like, clearly he was he's at least said he was working as a photographer. You don't know, like,
yeah,
you can be a working photographer and be also working at, you know,
it's like
another job.
People in those situations, like, oh no, never look at it. Like, okay, so now the question becomes, great, are you very happy with how much work you have and how much work you're doing and the quality of work that you're doing, or are you like, man, things are hard, and you know what's like what do I need to do, what am I doing wrong? It's like, okay, so if you're content, then like, dude, you're I guess you're winning.
Yeah,
you know.
But there's also like, this is such a nuanced topic as well, because I think that you could be a mediocre professional that's making a lot of money, that doesn't pay attention to photography as an art, other photographers, anything like that. You're making money, you're good at business, you're good at marketing, you're good at all these other things, and you can sell your work. Doesn't necessarily mean it's great work, but like, good for you,
right,
for making money doing that thing that you want to do. But the part where it comes to me is when they come into another place and they're like, sort of lecturing people that you shouldn't be even looking at other people's work, because then you don't want to be influenced by someone else's work, because then you're going to end up copying that work and doing things. I'm like,
which I am a massive advocate for.
Your starting point has to be copying if you want to.
100%.
And like, unless you're going, okay, if there's one route to go down where you do nothing, you're really good at business, you're good at marketing, you just take a picture and you manage to sell it because you're like extremely skilled at another thing. If you want to be an extremely skilled photographer, if you want to be one of the better photographers, be the best photographer that you can be, not thinking currently, you also have to be good at business and marketing, but looking at other people's work, seeing what people have done. Because if I didn't look at anybody's work and then suddenly I was like, oh man, I can double exposure this camera, and then figure out what I can do with double exposures, and then start to say that I did this. Why would I spend? It's a waste of time.
Which is a
to
classic
spend your time
photography
figuring
technique.
out what to do.
Yeah.
If there's somewhere else on the internet where you can absorb that information, or another photographer that you can talk to that you can absorb that information from, copy it to the best of your ability, figure out what it is, and over time it will blend into your own thing.
I think the issue we run into is like, okay, this individual is presenting as an authority. And then the question is, an authority on what? It's like authority on business or an authority on photography. Because if you're trying to be an authority in artistic stuff, and like, if you're a good artist, if you're a seasoned artist, if you're a internationally renowned artist, I'm pretty sure you're going to be aware of the techniques that have been employed like over the past several centuries. Yeah. Let alone what modern shenanigans are happening, right now. So it's like, okay, so then you can say, it's kind of like in martial arts. It's like, you can't be a master unless you've mastered X amount, and then you can't create a new form unless you've mastered like all the other forms or something along those lines. I'm not a martial arts guy. So it's like, I might be pulling something out of context and people be like, you're so dumb. It's not how it works. I'm like, okay, totally. That's fine. It's like, but when I had a mentor in the wedding industry, I had two mentors. I had like Lisa Brown and Matt McGraw. And these guys.
I know the name Matt McGraw.
Yeah, he's been in the game for 800 years actually. I make fun of him being an old guy, whatever. But no, he's like, the fact that he's been in it like over 2 decades and he's still going and still a leader in the industry is kind of a massive thing. So, but both of them, like Lisa was very pretty and girly, and I was actually the first guy she hired as her lighting assistant and everything, and because it was like her branding was Bella Rose Photography, and it was all girls, and she wanted to have, you know, girl power and everything. But it's like when she began incorporating more light into her stuff, so she could solve some low light issues, and she had complex problems. It's like I'm just a technical person, and so Matt actually sold me to her as like, hey, no, bring this guy along. This kid knows what he's doing. I think it was 18 or something. I don't remember. And yeah, so I just got to be, she had this high end, like LA, New York photographer, you know, kind of pretty, like pristine, spent a lot of time photoshopping all the photos she would deliver, you know, kind of thing. And so I got to see that. And then I also got to see Matt McGraw, who, a little more like to contrast is probably a bad, you know, use of terminology, but like down and dirty, like was not spending as much time on all the photos, but he was doing dramatic and off-camera flash like crazy. And the thing that like struck me about his work was the off-camera flash. And I had been studying photographers in my area at the time since I was 16, just to get an idea of what was out there. And I would see the off-camera flash stuff and be like mind blown and have no idea how that was accomplished. And then I'm like, I have to figure that out. And I think that's really what I personally love about photography. Yeah, dogs, man. I love the dog. I personally love about photography is when I can see something technically that I have completely no comprehension for how that was done. And then I have to solve the problem.
Yeah.
I have to figure out how to do that. Over a decade, my job in photography I'm still that, but like my value in what I'm making has leaned more into the moments and the people. Cause I think that's the only way, to keep the creativity and the love alive, is because it's like, okay, because how many techniques can you try and figure out and master, and then, you know, and then now what? It's like, now I love my people and finding those moments, and then having the bride crying on dad's shoulder at first dance, and then the tear shot that you get, and then it's like the hands on the prayer and things that happen in that context. It's like those are, and then stick a black and white on there, you know, and like now that stuff gets me going.
Yeah.
When before it was like, how is it you throw like there's light on the bride and light on the groom and they're offset and they're like their body's broken, like how the heck there was no Photoshop in that? And I finally figured that one out after, you know, I actually called Sam or texted Sam to try and figure out how to do that one, and he kind of gave me some pointers, and that photo was a decade in the making for me.
Nice.
You know, which I still love, but it's like, okay, that was the big scary technique off in the distance that I you know, had for a decade tried to, you know, wondered how that was done. And then now I did it. So now what?
Yeah.
You know, kind of thing.
My dog is whining. There's probably a cat outside. Or a squirrel or something.
Barely here. It's not that even.
Yeah, hopefully it doesn't show up.
But I replicated Lisa. So I figured out how to do pretty. I replicated Matt. I figured out how to do off-camera flash dramatic using a 14 millimeter, you know, and that's a really hard skill to learn. Actually, I realize this is people like, you know, avoid 14/16s for portraits, but like if you can figure out how to do that, that's actually a really, really fascinating skill. And I think there's something to be said that the majority of like many of the award circuits, you know, like ISPWP, WPJA, Fearless, like there's so many photojournalists that win with ultra wide angle shots. I think there's something to be said there. And if you can learn to use a wide angle in the wedding photography world, one that separates you from, I think, what the mainstream generally is. And it really depends on which stream you're in to call what something mainstream in this context. But I learned the ultra wide and the dramatic, and then I was a fusion of pretty and dramatic. And I was kind of this like mix of the two. And I was that for like 3 years until I discovered this guy named Sam Hurd.
We've talked about him so much already.
So much.
It's going to sound like this is just like a podcast to blow smoke up his ass.
I literally already made a podcast to blow smoke up his ass. It's like
I have plenty of criticisms for him, but also like fully respect his work as well.
Yeah, no, 100,000%. And it's like, and I'm sure he'll actually watch this. Like he watched my last one.
Oh, really?
Yeah. And it's like, hey, you know, here I am to, you know. There's so many words you can do to stroke your ego, I'll say, you know, and, you know, shamelessly, because I genuinely am like Yes, he has a lot of recognition, and he's compensated very well for it, and his Patreon and everything, and he should. I'm like, I still think we're undervaluing what he's done for the industry. I do genuinely think that. And then guys like Jeff Newsom too. It's like kind of also in that category. And I saw Sam and I saw Jeff Newsom, and I'm pretty sure, I don't know the details of that history, but I think Sam kind of did artistically kind of offshoot out of Jeff Newsom a little bit.
I think he took one of his workshops or something. I feel like I heard that.
Oh, that would make sense.
I feel like I heard him say that in a podcast or something.
No, that makes a lot of sense.
But yeah, I feel I can see that.
Yeah.
Like passed down influence kind of thing.
Right. And it's like, and you have a whole industry of people making weird glass things to put in front of your camera. And it's like, and that's not a new thing. Sam didn't invent that, but he for sure popularized it, at least in the nature that he did.
Yeah.
You know,
with like specifically with that prism.
Specifically with the prism, specifically with the convex glass and the way he did lens chipping. And I'm sure he wasn't the first, but it's like nobody else was doing that in our industry the way he was doing it. And it's like, and it's absolutely an artistic mind blow kind of like challenge.
Yeah.
You know, it was to me, and I'm like, I have to figure out how he did that. I'm like, how the heck, you know? And so
Turbo.
oh, the dog's name's Turbo. That's funny.
Yeah. He's ironically, he's not a turbo dog. Like he's kind of lazy,
chill.
very chilled.
Yeah.
Like,
you know, when I walked in, I would expect a little bit more energy, but he was, you know.
Yeah, no, he's a really good dog. He looks mean,
Yeah.
which I love about him, but he's like nothing but love for people. Turbo.
Well, this is the conversation about influences. So my holy trinity of photographers that have influenced me, and I became a Sam clone from year 3 to like year 5.
Yeah,
probably, and then after having been a Lisa Matt clone and then a Sam clone. So that's 5 years of my career. Then I found my own vibe, I would say, like both with editing and with composition and posing and aesthetic. And it's like all the things that go into a style, which I think posing is one of the most underrated things that people don't talk about when we talk about style.
Yeah.
I think it is the most underrated thing, but in that ways, in many ways, I'm still Sam clone, you know, it's like, and then we can talk about how he has used AI to kind of transform that as well. But Sam was one of my kind of Trinity influences. 2-man studios. I would also say Trinity of influence. And when I say 2-man, I'm like, that's almost a genre of photojournalists in the wedding world. I almost want to say, because I would put Chrisman Studios in there too. And then I would put, now it's like, I think there's Christian Cardona.
Yeah.
And there's like a handful of like Mexican photographers too, which brings me to
I was thinking about that this morning.
Yeah.
The amount of Spanish and like
Mexican
South American
photographers. Yeah. Good.
photographers that I absolutely idolize is wild.
They're doing something right. And it's like we get some of the best photographers in the world, I think, right now are like from Mexico, Colombia, South America, just in general. And it's like I remember all their names, and then which brings us obviously to the almighty Ferhuidisti.
Yeah.
He's probably, I still can't wrap my brain around his cropping philosophy. It's I would love to be more like, I think a year 7, I said in a different world, I would have, had a whole even edit aesthetic like Ferhuidisti.
Yeah.
And I'd rebrand my whole thing. And, but I just loved what I had going on so much. I didn't have it in me to kind of go that direction, but now my company's The Vibrant, and it's everything about the emotion and the color. I feel like, and what I do is like kind of fits that description.
I think it's good to it's very easy to see someone else that's doing something amazing.
Yeah.
And be like, oh, I want to tweak my colors to look like that.
Yeah,
or
right.
This or this. But like to stay on your own, like to stay as much as you can on the path that you've developed over that time. I think in the first 2-3 years, you do bounce around.
Oh, 100%.
Like I tried with making the blues more teal, like the teal and orange kind of thing, and the desaturated greens and all that sort of stuff, and then low contrast and high contrast, and you bounce around a little bit. But then when you find a groove that you like, it's good to stick in that, and then that's where you learn to sort of be influenced through other people's work. So like you can like Ferrory State, his stuff is just mind-blowingly good.
Yeah.
And like, where, can I take a piece of that and try and incorporate that in my own type of thing?
Right.
And
I'll literally
just
show up.
learning not to like buy his presets and try and copy the composition style and the preset
which
style.
I still did. When Develop came out with all their presets, I'm like, oh, so somebody else does idolize all my same favorite photographers, and then they just made their presets available. So then I did Sam Hurd's presets, I did Furquidisi's presets, I did Two Man's presets. It's like, but at that point, I had really found my own thing, and shout out again to my buddy Rob Tesser, who kind of really, it's like we developed the preset together, but I really owe him the credit on that one for kind of seeing what I liked and then being a Lightroom wizard to make the colors. Like, he developed my style. Nice. It's really funny.
What I appreciated about your style of pictures is that you managed to make things very orange without making the skin tones very orange. So like, because when we did the family shoot, like me and Quinn were both wearing like orange tone jackets, but our skin tones look good, and the orange jackets still like
vibrant,
still very
vibrant,
bright, vibrant colors.
Yeah, right.
So I was like, I that's kind of amazing how you're able to get that in there. I don't know, whether it's through tone curve or through whatever.
Through the hue saturation luminous sliders.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
But it looks great.
Which I built on, I'm gonna bring up my buddy Rob all the time. It's like, but it's that was his foundation.
Yeah.
100,000%. I'm like, I would apply it. I'm like, this is witchcraft. This is amazing. And then and every, like you set your preset and you tweak and then you make a new preset and you do that 1,000 times. It's like, but that was for sure on his foundation. And it's like, cause I'm a sucker for reds, and then like the reds got a pop, man.
Yeah.
And it's like, but when you mess with reds, you mess with skin tones.
Yeah.
And that's a scary thing.
Yeah.
Cause skin tone is king.
Do you use, a custom profile? Or
Not anymore.
You use the Adobe Color?
Now I use Adobe Color.
Yeah.
Because when I started using AI for editing, just Adobe Color is like, it makes it easy.
Yeah.
To kind of stick. And I was using Develop's profile for a while, just for the consistency of the thing. And that was really fun to experiment. But it's like, once you've found your style, like it's really just a toy.
Yeah.
At that point. So it's like, then I would mess with Adobe Color, Adobe Standard, and I would download Camera Faithful, because Adobe got rid of Canon's Faithful profiles at some point a few years back. And I had to have somebody, at least for the R6. And so I had to find a third-party adapted Camera Faithful profile. Or at least that was with the R. I'm pretty sure. No, it was with the R, and I wanted to apply that to the R6 because I remember loving the color on the R. And when the R came out, everybody hated the color. And then I remember reading Nessa K's review of the 5D Mark IV. And she said she threw caution to the wind and just applied her preset to all this stuff. And then she never looked back. And I'm like, that's exactly what I did.
Yeah.
And it was amazing. And then the R6 comes out, and it's, I don't know if it was actually the same as like the 1DX Mark III sensor, but it was like, at least the colors were close to that. And so that to me was reminiscent of the Mark III. And then I saw photographers on podcasts, to quote them, "I love my R6, but the color is ass," I believe is what they said. And dude, I went in on them on the comments.
I don't know. I think the colors are fine.
I think the colors are phenomenal.
Yeah.
And I'm like, and I will fight that guy. And I was like, and all fun and whatnot. And it's like, so I have a bone to pick with that. I need to find that podcast,
Dude,
But,
yeah. Sorry, keep going.
no, yeah. So it's like, cause my R6 color, like I just love the color on the R6, and it's, and yeah, there's all sorts of things to be said about that particular thing, but I did have to adapt a different preset because Camera Faithful wasn't working anymore the way it was working on the R. It was doing different things with the reds, and so Adobe Color just was working. It just worked on the R6, and so it's like I did that and I never looked back. Especially with using image and AI.
I also have kind of a belief that nobody else can tell the difference.
Oh yeah, no, I agree. 100,000%.
I'm like I've been thinking about this for years. I've been contending with it for years, and I'm also not that technical to like know which profile I necessarily like or dislike, and trying other things. I've certainly never like downloaded and imported a third party thing. Well, I do have, actually. I have the developed one, and I have the 2-man profile, which I almost never use unless I'm just like screwing around trying to see what it does. But down here, I have a box of prints that I've made over the years. Like every year, I just print like 4x6s of like pictures that I've made in day-to-day life, and I have made them with the R6, with the 5D, with my phone, with a couple different Leicas, a Sony, with multiple Fujifilm cameras, and film cameras, everything, and you cannot pick out one
which
from
one's
the other.
which. Yep, 100%.
If I put it in front of you,
100%.
and the same with film. Nobody could pick out the damn film pictures.
Yep.
Even. And people love to be like, I love it's vibey. I love the vibe of film. I feel like it feels different. You can't pick it out of this. No, you're not going to find it.
Yep.
You will not find the film picture in there unless it's a film picture I took maybe with like a really like a cheap point and shoot.
Yeah.
And then there's just so much grain and like old characteristics.
All of the characteristics
you
are
can find it
exaggerated.
But you
to
get
11.
a Canon EOS Elan 7 with a nice lens on it and some Portra.
Yep.
Pretty low chance you're finding the film picture in there.
Yeah.
And, especially if you shoot. Maybe if you.
I even spent the money on Jose Villa's film presets.
Oh, you did?
Yeah, and I used those. Dude, I have almost all the developer. There's more photographers now that I don't have, but like when it was my heroes, it was Sam, 2-man for Huiristi, and then also Jose Villa, who I've also been a big fan of for like 14 years. Yeah. It's like, it was that same thing. I'm like, oh my gosh, I can do the film thing. And I did it. I'm like, this is cool. It's fun. I'm going to go back to doing what I'm doing.
I started with film.
Yeah.
Maybe not start. Yeah, I actually started to pay attention to photography with a film. I had a couple cameras before that were, just crap cameras, like cheap cameras. And then like I got my granddad's film camera, and Turbo.
Hey, Turbo. Hi.
And that was how I learned like the exposure triangle, but I didn't even know it at first. I was just like moving the dials until the thing got in the middle, and I was like, I think when it gets in the middle, that means it's right. So I was doing that, and I was like, I'm way cooler than everybody else with a camera because I'm using film and getting it developed at the grocery store, and I'm getting like a CD back with some scans. And in my mind, I'm like, it's film, but I'm not really thinking about the fact that in order to get it on the CD, you basically have to take a picture of it with a digital camera.
Yeah.
So then and down the line, I was like, I'm not looking at film anymore.
Right.
And every color in this picture was replicable by a digital camera. Yep. So unless I go to a darkroom, develop it, stick it in an enlarger, and expose the darkroom, expose the paper in a darkroom, I'm not looking at a film picture. I'm looking at a digital representation of a.
But it's not the same, Liam. You're so wrong.
And I'm also this is another topic on my list, was like film versus digital, and I'm also like I do not mean to throw shade on film photography. Like,
I will.
I think.
No, I'm just kidding.
I think
that
like I've friends that I shot street photography with, and they only shot film for a while. Eventually switched to digital just because they were broke. And their pictures are fantastic, but like I didn't care that it was film. I just was like, what's the content of that image?
Right.
And was that good? So they still were coming out with 1 out of 100 pictures that were like really good keepers.
Yeah.
On film, and
we do love aesthetic.
Yeah.
But I think as photographers, we get so consumed by aesthetic, we forget about substance.
Yeah. And if it's fun, like I love that people shoot it and it's fun. It makes me shoot
100%.
more.
I'm still talking about buying a Nikon ZF.
Yeah.
Because the vibe and the feel, but it's still digital. So my workflow stays intact and I'm not frustrated by roadblocks.
Where I get snippy with film stuff is like on multiple occasions. So I have this Leica.
Yeah, I was paying attention to your Leica cameras.
Do not recommend anybody buy. I'll never recommend a Leica.
Which one is that one?
It's an M262.
M2. Okay. And then what's that one over there?
That's a Q.
The Q.
I'm going to sell that one. I do not like it.
No way.
I don't like it.
You should let me try it before you sell it.
You can try it. I lost my train of thought.
We're talking about film.
Okay,
Yeah.
multiple occasions, because like people have looked at that and been like, "Oh, you're shooting 35mm," and I'm like, "The lens, yeah."
Yeah.
And I was like, "But it's no, it's digital."
It's digital, yeah.
And a couple times people have been like, "Oh, forget it."
Yeah.
Like literally, like brush me off,
bro.
like, "Oh, is that film?" No, it's digital. And they're
The
like, "Oh, yeah, yeah."
pretentiousness.
And I'm just like, I don't even see a camera on you.
Yep.
I don't leave the house without a camera nowadays. Like I like whether it's a point and shoot in my pocket or whatever. Like I've always got something. And I'm just like, it makes me want to be pretentious towards people.
Yeah,
with
yeah,
film.
no, 100%.
But that's not really the case at all. Like I went to New York, bunch of like everybody has a Leica, everybody's shooting film.
Yeah.
And occasionally you'll come across someone with a Q or a digital camera or just like a Fujifilm or whatever.
It's a great marketing tool to say, hey, I shoot film.
Oh, absolutely.
And that's why I charge $8,000, $10,000.
Yeah.
Which that feels low to me now, given some of the photographers I get the ads on my feed saying like, are you only charging $2,000-$4,000 for weddings? Like I charge $25,000 a wedding. And I'm like, okay, that's cool. I still like a lot of people, and a lot of people are in that 3, 4, 5, 2. I mean, that's a whole conversation, wedding pricing.
That is another topic that we should definitely talk about.
That is a massive It's like, I'm immediately thinking, I say things about I have thoughts and opinions, but then I think of 1,000 exceptions to every rule of my opinions. And
everything I say has a counterpoint, and I'm not necessarily right. I'm the very few things am I like, very few hills will I die on.
Okay. So,
because you can, I'm all for other opinions.
No, let's be freaking controversial right now. You ready? Okay.
Let's go.
Because freaking pricing. Okay. So I don't think pricing should be, because everyone's like, oh, you should charge more. You should charge more. You should charge more. I'm like, how much is your living expenses? How much is the cost of living in your area? What is the average cost of a wedding in your state and then city? And then what is fair? Yeah. And then it's a fair. That's such a like, fair in what context? And luxury and da-da-da and da-da-da. And then you, oh my gosh. Okay. Well, the whole thing depends on what your goals are. So it's like, okay, I want to shoot 5-6 weddings a year, and I want them to be 10 to 15K. Cool. My financial goals, I need to make $150,000 a year. I need to make $250,000 a year. I need to make $78,000 a year. I remember like the first year I made $78,000 from weddings and family portraits, and I was like, I'm good. Yeah. I don't need, this is great. I'm so comfortable. And it's like in my living expense and everything that made sense. And then the next year I actually made 136. And I was like, oh, okay, this is a different thing. And I'm working just a little bit more, and it's like, if I'm doing 20 weddings a year, to me is like a sweet spot. And that's not the case for everybody. Yeah. Like my mentor, Matt McGraw, like he was like, he called himself a wedding whore. He's like, yeah, no, he'll do 60, 70 weddings, And when I was assistant to Matt and Lisa, like between the two of them, it's like I would do all the ones Lisa got priority. And then when Matt had one and I wasn't wasn't assisting Lisa, I would go to him. So I was at 72 weddings that one year, and then 60 the next. And it's like, and he would do 60 himself. And then you do 40, like in as the industry, I think right now we're kind of in a, like everybody's experiencing kind of less weddings, I feel like the year after COVID was massive. And then there's all sorts of different numbers and everything, but it's like I was in a real estate office and hearing the agents talk, and they're like, "Oh, the industry's down 40%." I literally got off the phone with Matt, my mentor, and he said, "My weddings are down 40%." I'm like, "There's obviously a big correlation with big life decisions, and spending." And so a lot of people are down, and some people aren't worried about that. But then a lot of people I see on the internet, their business model is fusing their work with an education stream of income where they're also teaching. And I'm like, that's fair, and in my opinion, as long as you don't lose the main thing that you're teaching on and you keep doing that, so you continue to be a modern authority on the subject, then it's like, let's freaking go, dude. Yeah. it's part of the reasons I respect Sam Hurd so much. You know, it's like, and Fur and Two Man. Like Two Man, I inquired with them to shoot our whatchamacallit. Like I was planning out a 15-year, you know, vow renewal or something, or 20-year, just to like be way far out. And I'm like, love Two Man Studios. I want them to do it. I've had Sam shoot my family. And you know, it's like, I got to find some other thing for Furquid EC to come up and do. And I think Two Man was like, you know, this was a few years ago and their pricing might've changed, but at the time it's like, it was 11,000 Canadian. And so 8,000 American dollars plus travel. And I'm like, and at the time I was like, oh, so much money. And then now I'm like, not for a wedding in Hawaii, like I was talking about, thinking about, you know, it's kind of like, no, that's fair. And I know what to aim at, and I know what to, and I would call that worth it. So it's like exceptions to every rule, man.
Yeah.
But they also only want to shoot like 10 weddings a year.
Yep.
As far as I understand.
I think Lanny wants to do more.
Lanny wants to do more?
I think he was like, maybe 15. And then Erica's like,
yeah, because I think they were doing 11, and I'm like, nah. Every photographer who says, "Oh, I'm only taking X, Y, Z," no, if they get the opportunity to do another one, they're going to take it.
Yeah.
At least I haven't met one who wouldn't do that. You know. So it's like, that's funny. That's really funny. You know. But then I meet the people who are like, no, I'm going to do 40, and I have like $4,000 and that's set and everything. And
I also think it's like where do the clients that you want to serve sit in there? Yeah. Like maybe you do want to do luxury. Great. And, you know, get to know planners. I feel like once you get above maybe 6,000 or 7,000, you probably have to start having relationships with planners.
100,000%.
Because the planners coming to them with the photographers of that. I'm not necessarily, but I assume. Yeah. And I think in that sort of middle of the range, I always used to hear like everybody's in the middle, but I don't know that everybody is in the middle. I think that a lot of people are in the lower end of the middle because, at least from my perspective, it's bloody terrifying every time that your price goes from like a 1, a 2, a 3, and a 4 in front of your zeros. Yeah. You know what I mean? Because like I remember the first time I got more than $3,000 for a wedding, and I was like, oh, they booked. Yep. Oh my God, they booked.
Yeah. It was mind blowing the first time that happened. Yeah.
And now I'm bummed if there's a 3 there. Like I'm like I took anything below 4 out of my pricing because I'm like, you know, if you book something lower further out, and then something higher comes along, you're kind of like, dang it. But like, I'll still serve all those clients as best as I like, as if they were my $4,000, $5,000, $6,000 clients. Like,
100%.
Do everybody the best I possibly can. Yeah. But I think
that's the thing people don't realize is like whatever the number is, if you have me show up, like you're going to get all of me. Yeah. And I'm like, I don't know how to do less than what I'm going to try and do at a wedding. Yeah. It's like, I'm still there and I'm still doing like, so I had a 4-hour wedding and I was like, oh, I have to get all the things and check off all my lists and like perform. And then it's like, and that wedding is freaking killer. Yeah. And rivals my 6 and 8 hour weddings. You know? It's like,
I used to find
probably a bad thing to put on the internet to say that.
I stopped offering 4 hours or 6 hours. Yeah. And I think we talked about this before, but like I'm taking, if someone books for 4 hours, I'm taking the day off anyways.
Oh, 100,000%.
Like there's nothing else going on
happening that day. Yeah.
So I would rather start my price a little higher and just put up to 8 hours in my cheapest package. And if someone's like, we only want 6, I'm like, well, then this package is the right one for
up
you.
To 8.
Because I do nothing else the rest of the day. Like I was like,
you got me, man.
You can take advantage of the full 8 hours if you want. If there's only 7 hours, that's fine. Like that's what your day is going to look like. Because
that's so real.
Sometimes if I would have a lower package, some clients, I mean, I would do this myself. I'd be like, do I really need the 8? I could probably just save a few bucks, do the 6, we get everything, we'll get, you know, we'll get the vast majority of the stuff that we actually know that we want, and they're happy. And I'll give them my all for all those hours. I had a 6-hour wedding recently that had booked quite a while ago, and it was great. It worked out great. It was the amount of time that they needed. Yeah. But I find that if I put 8 there, and they just have me there for the 8. Yeah. There was something else an hour before or an hour after
100%.
I started that was worth being in there.
100,000%.
And I don't know what it was. They don't know what it was.
Uh-huh.
None of us know what it was.
Yeah.
But the more I'm there,
Yep.
there is something that I'll take a picture of, whether it's someone hugging, a grandparent arriving and not having seen another family member for a long time. Like there's a hug, a tear, a smile, a gift exchange, a something somewhere that was worth having that extra time in there.
Yep.
And you just don't know it until it's there. I would love to have just I love my packages just to be like 2 months, and it's like, it's this much and it's all day.
Yep.
And I'm there the whole time.
Yep.
But I don't think I'm in a business place to have that.
Yeah,
and,
yeah.
you know, I think they did the whole thing like relationships with planners and
Yeah.
all that a long time ago.
Yeah.
So they built that platform where planners are
Right.
sending them to people, and they're now famous photographers.
Right.
So they can have that package.
Which I had that when I lived in North Carolina, and it's like, and I built my business there, and
Nice.
and it's like, but I had 10, 11 years there, and now I'm like starting over in Colorado Springs. So it's like,
Yeah.
so it's just, you have to hit the ground running again.
Yeah.
You know, and you have to do the whole thing.
Yeah.
But I also tried the whole day thing and do my whole day. Okay. So yeah, context. I had rent that was $800 at one point.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I charged $2,500 for a wedding.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. And then my, mortgage went to $1,400, and it's like now like 25, dude. I'm like, yeah. So I need 12. If I was doing 25, I would need 12 weddings
To basically get living expenses.
to just get housing,
Yeah.
not including everything else everybody has to pay for, in life. And so it's like, and we do all the things, we supplement. We're like, yeah, I do family sessions. Yeah, I do real estate. Yeah, I do all these things. And we do that, especially as photographers. We're kind of like,
I feel like I have thoughts on that as well. Like, I've seen some people break down their pricing as like, what did your gear cost? What does your studio cost? What is what are your business running costs? What are your, what do you need? Blah, blah, blah. And like, I can say, all right, sure. I can think those things out in my mind. And I do. Like, I need this much to basically be happy with where I am in my work life to sustain this business. But I also believe that if what I deliver just needs to be worth that.
oh, 100,000%. That's the other unspoken thing we haven't even brought up yet.
Because there's definitely people out there that are charging $6,000-$8,000.
Yeah.
Whose work is fine.
Yeah. And they justify that with, the client gets a box.
Yeah.
And that box has candy and a physical album.
Experience.
And the whole experience. And I'm like, go do it.
Yeah.
Yes, you win. That's amazing. It's like, I would be really happy if I spent $8,000 and got all that too, like 100%,
I would be pissed off.
if you did get that.
If I got that and mediocre pictures,
Right.
I would be like, oh, this is what the $8,000 was
Well,
for.
generally, like, okay, so
But generally, they're not mediocre pictures
Right.
when people are at that.
and what I
range.
would
So
call
I don't mean
mediocre
to,
pictures are probably absolutely beautiful photos that have the same composition as every other wedding photos that photographer has taken.
Yeah,
They
it
could
could just
say
be
the same for me. That I do the same compositions every time.
Yeah.
It's just wacky compositions, but they're the same, but they're
Yeah.
wacky. It's like my own mentor, Matt Girl, says like 80% of photographers are the same, is what he'd say. And same, that 80% will argue about what same means.
Yeah,
and
yeah.
they'll all say they're different.
Yeah.
And it's like, and I liked what I heard Two Man kind of say, like, I think it was Erica. It's like, light and airy, dark and moody are not styles. They're tools in a tool bag. I'm like, thank you.
Yeah.
I'm like, it's just part of stuff that we do. And it's like, if the lighting calls for it, then absolutely we're going to do it.
Did you do Metanoia? Did you do their...
I did not do that. Did you do it?
Yeah. They
Bro.
mentioned that in Metanoia. So maybe I know they do
It was
free
probably
workshops.
from a preview that I saw.
Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't actually do it. I've thought about it. I've like, it was like $2,500, $3,000 to get the course or whatever.
Yeah, it was...
At least the new one. The 2-man U is what they have now.
Yeah, it's a little... I don't remember what it was. I think
Which, in my opinion,
$2,500 to $3,000.
absolutely worth it.
It was great.
I haven't done it, and I'm like, yeah, I would. It's just not the thing that necessarily need right now. I'm really happy with a lot of well, here's a question. How much about their university is about their philosophy and shooting versus marketing and business?
There's almost no marketing business in it.
Interesting. See, that's what I'm interested in right now.
It's entirely like, here's what we do.
Yeah.
In depth.
Yeah.
And why we do it. And part of this, like the first whole class, I think, is like just getting your mindset correct.
Yeah.
And so much of it is about that, and it ties into the whole rest of it.
The word is metanoia, so yeah.
Yeah, and I don't know what that means.
Oh, it just means, it literally is the Greek word for changing your mind.
Oh.
The only reason I know it is because I
should have Googled it.
Like the Bible, it's like, be ye transformed by the renewing of your mind. It's the word renewing, by the metanoia of your mind. So it's like, I think that's a brilliant, Greek, Judeo, repentance word, that they pulled in for the thing. And I'm like, that's brilliant.
Got it. Most of it was like trying to sort of like train your mind to look at things differently.
Yeah.
And they'll break down their camera gear and stuff, but they're like, we're going to spend as little time as possible on this, but here's everything we use and why we use it.
Right.
Because we know we're going to get asked this question.
Yeah. Yeah, you are.
And so
that's the most technically amazing photo I've ever seen you take. That's cool. But what lens did you use?
Yeah. That's it. And they try and reiterate, they're like, we have nice stuff, but like, it doesn't.
It serves a purpose.
It is a tool in the bag, and just because we have this one doesn't mean you need this one.
Right.
So that helped stop me from switching to Sony, because they were like, we love these cameras, but we had Canon for a while, and we changed it because of, I guess, the mirrorless system.
Mm-hmm. Because Sony was mirrorless before Canon was.
Before Canon, and then they've stuck with that. What the heck was I talking about? This happens to me too much.
What's in metanoia? What they were actually teaching in the course?
Yeah,
not
and
marketing and business.
It was granular to like. This is how we think about exposure when we walk in a room,
right?
And this is like how we mix natural light and flash stuff. So it's almost like one camera had the trigger on it, and they carry one little light into prep rooms. And they think about that's why they're there all day. They think about what they might do for flash photos when that time comes, which is why they would like set up a flash in a bathroom, like on a clamp on a mirror somewhere. And they're I know he's going to shave at some point. So I'll set this up now. This camera will have the settings for it. And then the other camera they go into the darkest corner of the room, set the ISO, aperture, shutter speed, whatever their order of operations normally was. And then, so they're at 1600 ISO, and then they go, as they move around the room, they go into a lighter part of the room. Instead of buggering around with all the different settings and ISO, they just crank the aperture.
Yeah.
Or shutter speed.
Oh, okay. Interesting.
And this was when we were talking about Sam Hurd a little bit before, and I was like, not necessarily criticism, but one of the criticisms I've had of like opinions that he's put out, maybe in threads or in reels, I forget. But he's just like, I don't know why anybody uses anything other than the widest aperture available.
See, but he doesn't always use wide aperture.
But he doesn't, for like certain portraits or something, you see him using 24mm at f/22 or something. But like, as the vast majority of the time, he was like with the how good autofocus is now and all this sort of stuff. Like, sure, but maybe that wide aperture look is not necessarily what you want, need. Right.
I agree.
If you're trying to include multiple things in the scene that are happening.
Right.
So sometimes I think like there's a British photographer, I'm blanking on her name right now. She's like 5.6 is about as wide of an aperture as she uses most of the time, because her pictures are complex, like street photography looking kind of pictures. And I think they're beautiful for that reason. Right. And I think all of those things are tools in your box. You don't necessarily need to stick to one.
Because I came from that mindset. The 5 points. Oh, you need to make sure that they're in focus. It's a group photo. Like so I was that mindset with like Matt McGraw and Lisa, even for group photos like F4. So Sam's, why would you use anything other than the widest aperture, was almost permission for me to just throw caution to the wind. I'm like, yeah, go for it. Like the technology is amazing. I'm like, holy crap, it is amazing. And I I shot a wedding this past weekend, and Matt McGraw was my second shooter, and he's never second shot for anyone. And it's like he was my mentor 11, 12 years ago. And so it's like it was kind of a full circle type thing. And I was commenting, I'm like, yeah, you don't have to shoot that 50 at 2.2. He's like, oh, yeah, no, it won't be sharp. I'm like, you have an R6 now, buddy. And then he did it. He goes, well, damn. I'm like, you can be comfortable. Like, you can shoot at 1.4, bro. It's going to be okay. Like, and then you get this character. It's funny because I was over here and then Sam said that. And then I'm like, yeah, no. And I'll still dip into this side. Yeah. But yeah, if we started like, why would you shoot anything open? Like, well, not if I want to get a, dance floor photo at, with an ultra wide and a direct flash and then those streamy lines, then yeah, I'm going to be f8, 9, 11, whatever. But it's like, that's so funny. Yeah, it's like where your starting point is, and Sam himself doesn't even follow that rule.
Yeah, I mean, I know that like there's always exceptions to everything you say, and two-man metanoia even has that same thing. They're like, this is what we say we do as standard. Yeah. But throughout this, you're going to see us not follow our own rules for different situations. Right. And it's really just it's almost just a case of having done it so many times, you have the muscle memory for all the things you need. And as you're thinking through the thought process, you're like, oh, in this case, I'm going to shoot it wide open instead of that. Yeah, because like you almost have like an intuition.
Well, it's like even that philosophy of shooting is like the majority of what they're going to do is photojournalism, like stop down. Yeah. And then they'll make an exception with wide open. Yeah. And I feel like Sam is the majority of what he's going to do is wide open. Yeah. And with exceptions, he'll stop down. Yeah. And it's like, but then he'll also make it an inflammatory comment of be like, why would you do anything other than shooting wide open? Yeah. I'm like, yeah, good job winning at social media.
Yeah. I mean, I figured like, I think there was like a comment. I don't read a lot of threads, but Facebook sends me notifications for threads all the time. Yeah, because occasionally and they're trying to get people to engage in it, and I get sucked into it so much. Same. I don't comment. I really don't spend time doing it. I'm just like, I look at it and I'm like, oh, I got sucked in. Yeah,
100%.
So like, and Sam Hurd is good at that.
He's very good at that.
Because he'll be like, people get mad at me for my opinions online. But then sometimes I read his opinion, and I read his opinion as if like, no, he's saying that's how it should be. Right. Which is not so much, it might kind of be an opinion, but when you say it, when you're shooting on someone, it feels like less of an opinion.
A shooting, yeah. Don't shoot on me.
Yeah, and that's when I'm like, right, just because you should, or like, why should you? Right. I always think that photography can be whatever you want. Right. Like, Sam Hurd can do beautiful work at f1.2. Yeah. With all the modern equipment, and two-man or whoever else can do beautiful work at f8 if that's what they choose to use, or whatever aperture you want. It doesn't necessarily have to be.
Yeah, I think the grand majority of like award circuit photographers, you're going to find everything over f4.
Yeah, all the time, especially for moments. Right. At portraits, I like. I'm as soon as I go into portrait mode, I'm shooting wide open.
Yeah. Same.
Unless I'm specifically trying to stop down for something, but then like going around, I'll have the 50 1.2 ready to go, and sometimes I'll shoot stuff at 1.2, but a lot of the time I'm at 2.8. Yeah. Just because it's, I don't know. I just get a little bit more in focus, and sometimes I think that looks nicer in a moment sort of scenario. Yeah. It's hard to define exactly because I switch around things so often, and now I'm getting mixed up in my own words and producing word salad because it's never necessarily consistent.
Well, once so what I found is like when I was shooting 50 and 14 or 50 and 16 to 35, I that 1635 or that 14, I was either like f2.8, or if my lens was an f4, I would use an f4. And then so when I'm shooting wide open, I'm automatically thinking photojournalistically to where it's like, oh, so if server runs into cake and cake falls down, and then bride goes, oh no, and you have crazy face, and kid goes, yay with fork, and you have this like hypothetical idealized moment of like, oh, all of these things are happening at the same time, and then you just grab a moment and then you kind of dodge and burn later to accentuate the fact that all of these things were happening and you were paying attention.
Yeah.
Brilliant. And the wide is like, I think in my mind, the archetype of the ultra wide in a wedding context is that like I'm striving for that sort of thing.
Yeah.
I use the wide for dramatic off-camera flash portraits, because low angles and even high angles with the ultra wide, just it's different than that 80% you would see, I guess, and it stands out. And I think that's why I do think that the award circuit of photographers is generally the 20%. And then we can insert Sam's opinion of the award stuff being, ridiculous. And I agree and I disagree.
Oh yeah.
On that level, it's like, yes, it is a thing. It's a paid club. We all have to pay to be in.
Yeah.
Also, you have to be good enough to be in it.
Yeah.
Also, I think it's BS that Fearless doesn't allow double exposures to be in the thing.
I think they used to.
Did they used to?
Yeah, I think they changed over time. They changed rules.
Oh, I'm so curious what the thought process was.
I wonder if there's just an abundance of it.
That's interesting, and it's so dramatically different. It can stand out. Yeah.
Because they also at one point had a rule where you couldn't submit peeing photos.
Dang it! I have one of those. It's killer.
And I think they've lifted that rule.
Oh, I gotta resubmit that one then. That's funny.
Yeah, I think they lifted that rule because, like, round about the end of Metanoia, they won a photo for like a woman sitting backwards on a toilet that they always have in their portfolio.
Right. Yeah, I know exactly the photo.
Yeah. And I was like, wow, it took 8 years to get that picture, and they were like, we actually weren't allowed to submit it for a long time.
Right, for a long time, right. Yeah, well, my friend Michelle and my partner photographer in North Carolina, she has a couple killer. She's a woman. She goes with the bride into the thing, so she's like, and like that's not something I generally get to get.
Yeah,
and it's like you have Erica and Lanny Mann, and so they the guy girl dynamic is like where they have the bride in the shower and then the kids peeking around the thing, and that's a killer moment. I would never get it.
Yeah, it's funny that like one of the tactic that Lanny says. He would use, like, people see the shower shots in their portfolio, so they kind of know that they do it already. But like guys won't just be like, "Hey, take a picture of me in the shower." Right. But Lanny would like sit down with the groom and be like, "Hey, your fiance wants a shower shot," and then he'd be like, "Yeah," and he's like, "Seriously." Yeah, exactly. So he's like, "I'm going to set up a light in it, like even if it's possible, because sometimes you're in a crappy little hotel room and you can't really take a shot in the shower." So he like sets up a light in there and it's ready to go, and he's like, if it's okay with you, just leave the door open when you shower, if it's a possibility. Amazing. And then when they're showering, he'll just like show up with his camera.
I was so curious how they accomplished that. Yeah, it's like, your fiance wants to shower, so no, for real. Yeah, that's so funny to me. That's so funny to me. I was so curious. That's hilarious.
Yeah. And I mean, it's like one of the like defining avenues that they've took, because it's such a rare thing to do. So like to have that be part of your portfolio and part of like your thing, I think it's pretty freaking awesome. Right. But it's really hard to copy.
It is. Yeah.
Without exclusively seeming like you're copying them.
Right.
Which is fine. Like I don't really have any plans to try and photograph people in the shower.
Yeah, me neither. But, it's like, if anybody wants to.
If someone was like, "Hey, take a picture of me in the shower," and they've got like some beautiful tropical shower with like outdoor thing, I'm like, "Oh, hey, let's try it."
Yeah, and that's the thing. It's funny the way I just said that was super creepy, but like, no, the reason those shower shots are so incredible is because they're moment shots. Yeah, and it's like because you have the kid peeking around the thing, and it's like, and it's a shower in the rainforest, and it's like you're outside and you're shooting through a window. And then they're backlit and it's a silhouette. Yeah. And it's crazy cool. Yeah. It's, So if you're in, and then I know so many other photographers like, absolutely not, never, that's so distasteful or whatever. I'm like, no, I think it's another brilliant artistic expression.
Yeah. That's part of the opinion thing that I always think about. Like, if I'm here like criticizing Sam Hurd's opinion on shooting at 1.2 or something like that, and I apply this with criticism that I get on YouTube and stuff like that. I'm like, why the heck would they care what my opinion is? Right. Because look what they've accomplished. Yes. So like, if someone's criticizing, plenty of people criticize Two Man for vulgar or whatever they don't like about the pictures. Why the heck do they care what
Right.
our opinion is, because they're doing great.
Yeah.
And they're actually in the arena doing the thing, and they're kind of like at the top of the mountain, I guess.
Right.
And we're the ones that are still climbing it.
Yeah.
So
I mean, I guess if our goal is that mountain, then it makes no sense to criticize. It's like, but if our goals are like, it's just fun to disagree on the internet, man.
Yeah.
It's like the bait.
if the people who are criticizing the people at the top flipped it, like when they get to the top,
Yeah.
they're going to stop caring about what other people's.
Oh, 100%.
I think a lot of the time when we criticize other photographers, it comes from a bit of a place of insecurity.
Yeah.
And I in my older age, I really try and be more careful about that. Because if I'm like looking at someone's work and being like, that seems dumb or stupid.
Well, because I
or whatever,
immediately think of 1,000 exceptions. I'm like, well, I
There's
think
always
it's
an
dumb,
exception.
but it's like it works and whatever it works for the. And yeah, it's cool that we can accept all the things, but also it's like then we don't have spicy takes and then we don't have comments on our videos.
Yeah, it's fun. It's fun to talk about, and like
It is fun to talk about.
everything that I say or criticize is sort of a caveat with like
Right.
with there's always another exception.
Right.
There's always, and I don't know how to properly articulate this right now, and it's a problem. Maybe I should have thought this out beforehand. But when you see someone saying something online, this is how it should be. The easy one is film, because I remember getting a negative comment when I tried to shoot Cinestill
Yeah.
for one video. And they were like, this Cinestill look is crap. You should shoot Kodachrome like Fred Herzog or Alex Webb did. Proper professional use film, something like that.
When did you shoot Cinestyle?
2021. I shot one roll of it just for fun.
Oh.
And
This is a different world for me then.
the thing is, Kodachrome, Cinestill's like it's a repackaged movie film.
Okay, because you were saying that. I was thinking Cinestyle.
Sorry, Cinestill film.
The log, not quite log, because the camera doesn't shoot log, but you can download the Cinestyle thing on
No. Cinestill is like repackaged. I think it's Kodak's 800T or something. I don't remember. It's a tungsten balanced film.
Yeah.
And it was used for motion pictures. Cinestill, the company, like repackaged the film and so as photography film, but they had to like remove some layer from it, which made so lights when you're shooting at night, tungsten balanced, and like a street lamp will bloom red. So it has like a very specific look to it.
Yeah.
And I was like, I'm just going to play with it and see what it was. And I shot one roll and it was fine, whatever. I didn't really enjoy it that much. But then someone's saying, no, this is crap. You should be shooting, Kodachrome like Fred Herzog, Alex Webb did. Proper professional use film stock or something. I can't find that comment again. But as far as I'm aware, Kodachrome was released as a consumer film.
Yeah.
Back in the days when black and white was what professionals used. And then professionals started using Kodachrome because it was beautiful colors and all this stuff. And now people sort of put on a pedestal the Kodachrome photographers. Kodachrome's long discontinued.
Yeah.
So someone that says you should be shooting Kodachrome probably doesn't know what they're talking about, and probably is certainly not shooting Kodachrome because you can't develop it anymore. And I think you can develop it black and white instead or something, but there's always another photographer that didn't do that thing. So like those photographers shot Kodachrome, great. Matt Stewart shot Fuji film.
Yeah, right.
And his pictures are beautiful. A lot of photographers shoot portrait, or like there's just always other stuff. It's not just because some people that you idolize shot something a certain way, that doesn't mean that was the right way to do it. Right. Which is why when people get bogged down in street photography, they're like, really, the street photography has to be of people. It should be at 28 millimeters, maybe 35. And I'm like, that's not the case.
That's BS. Some of the coolest, mind-blowing street photography. This whole film world's actually completely different, and like I'm very foreign to the nuances of like film choice.
Yeah,
but it's like, dude, Sam, freaking bringing Sam back into the thing again. It's like I think he was in Thailand or something, and he used the 45 tilt shift, and he walked by, and he had the whole camera screen.
Oh, and he said he would shoot it sideways.
Yeah, and he'd roll the focus everything to get these things. And so that was some of the coolest. I've never seen street photography like that.
And my street photography brain heard that, and I was like, that's dumb as shit. Like, just man up and take a damn picture. But like, it doesn't mean anything. You know, I like, that's fine. You're trying something out.
Yeah.
Great.
Yeah.
Go for it. Like, just because my opinion is that street photography should maybe lean more towards some other look.
Yeah. That's
not necessarily correct. There's a book somewhere in here. It might not be in here.
Can I put pause and go to the bathroom?
Yeah, go for it.
Like I have to really pee.
There's one downstairs.
Oh, that's good. We had a break. I needed a break. So you were about to show me a book.
Yeah, so we're talking about how shooting is ridiculous. It's like, I'm shooting on Sam Hard. Like, don't use your giant shooting. Yeah.
Yeah, don't shoot on me.
Don't be like I'm shooting in that. Like, don't be using your giant camera and tilt shift lens and shoot sideways with your screen out, because that seems a bit ridiculous to me. But I like very simple, plain, stupid, like prohibitively expensive, and not practical for anything else except the exact type of street photography that I like.
Yeah,
that camera. And most of the time I'll have it up at my eye. Sometimes I'll shoot from the hip, and there's people that'll shoot on me saying you shouldn't be shooting from the hip. Shoot straight with the camera to your eye. Don't be ridiculous. Man up. Get on with it. But if you shoot like Fujifilm, you could flip the little screen out. I think it's so practical, and some of my favorite shots have came from using little like flip up screens, or just the LCD screen on the back of a point and shoot. Saul Leiter in the 1950s shot long focal lengths abstract street photography on like expired film for cost saving purposes. And they're just these beautiful abstract street things with like elements of stuff you can recognize. And
interesting.
Like, he was like one of the original street photographers. And
there's like barely any people in here.
Yeah, and a lot of it doesn't have people, or it has like outlines of people, or they're very small in the frame, or they're out of focus.
They're radically out of focus.
Yeah, and he never really shot with
so interesting
wider lenses and stuff soft and things like that. And Ernst Haas as well. There's another book down here somewhere with his work.
Yeah.
And he does a lot of like longer focal lengths street photography. And a lot of the time, if you do stuff like that nowadays, people will be like, that's not street photography. You got to have people in it. You got to be 35, 28 millimeters. You got to get close. You want to smell the picture, smell the street, that sort of stuff. And then there's other street photographers that, were 28 millimeters, 6 inches from people's face with a direct flash, like Bruce Gilden.
Well, you have that one guy, People of New York, I think it was. And he was doing...
He had like a Facebook page or something.
Yep, he did. And then he printed a book, I'm pretty sure.
And he just took portraits of strangers that he talked to.
Where they were looking at, he would talk to him for a little bit, and then the story was a thing, and it's like, and I was like, that's not street photography. That's a 50 millimeter 1.2 Canon 5D Mark III.
I was like, that's portraits.
Right, it's just portraits.
To me, that's portrait photography. Yeah. And now there's a ton of people on TikTok who walk up to people in the street, take their portrait and tag it street photography. Yep. And I don't call it street photography, but if the market decides it's street photography, then it's street photography.
Right.
So we can argue about it till we're blue in the face. Right. There's always an exception, even in like the world of the greats of photography. Like Saul Leiter is kind of held up as one of the greatest street photographers of the especially like pioneer of color kind of thing. Like he's held up like that. And then there's Alex Webb, who I idolize his work. I've got a few of his books there, and his are, why not just... Where the heck is it?
I like being in your office because we can see all the cool books. Well, the audience can't see, but it's like, these are cool.
I'll just get Brooklyn one. The one that he's like most known for is at the bottom of the pile and the dog's sitting in front of it.
Which is great to pull out visual media on
So
the podcast.
this is like,
oh,
I know,
see,
right?
yeah.
So this is like complex.
That I like.
Like f8, and the reason is, I mean, that's why I kind of ended up sticking with 35mm for Street, is because he predominantly shot 35mm.
When I get my ZF, whenever that day comes, the Nikon ZF, I'm gonna like stick a 35mm on it, and that's gonna be my travel camera, and like that's
Dude, come and borrow this. Come and borrow this. Get a little adapter for
I'd
it,
love
and
to,
try manual focus.
Yeah.
And just stick it at f8.
Manual.
At f8, and then 10 feet focus. You know, you just move a little. This is.
Yeah. See, that's freaking.
Stick the tab at 10 feet.
That's an image right there.
And basically everything's in focus.
At 10 feet.
Yeah, so I usually shoot like f11, and then there's like a bit on the camera.
Okay, why 10 feet?
So 10 feet on the focus scale. If you're at f8, you're almost focused out to infinity.
Yep.
And then the focus comes all the way into about 6 feet. So
to achieve the look that you want.
To achieve the street photography look that I like.
Sounds like a problem-solving mechanism that is indicative of we've just come up with different ways to solve different problems nowadays.
And yeah, I think that was, you know, Leicas were the photojournalist camera of choice back in the day before like Canon sort of Canon Nikon, I guess, took over the market a little bit. And probably because slow film, manual focus lenses, all that kind of thing.
Oh my God, that's brilliant.
I always liked that I could. Yeah, so good, isn't it?
That's amazing.
I always liked that I could feel where the tab is, this little tab thing on the bottom.
Yeah.
And just have my second finger feels the rib on the camera.
Yep.
And I know that I'm focused from infinity to about, so that's about under 10 feet at f8. And if I do it slightly more than that, if I go put my finger just past the little ridge on the bottom of the camera, at f11, I'm focused from just under 6 feet all the way to infinity.
Huh.
So I prefer f11. And then on a sunny day, ISO 400, I can shoot 500th of a second, and I'm exposed correctly.
That's
a sunny day in Colorado. Sometimes it's different places, and this lens also shoots a little dark. So if I shoot with a different camera.
Yeah, see, this is much more indicative to me of like what I also consider street photography.
Yeah.
It's like this book.
Yeah, this is a much more sort of traditional sense of it. And Alex Webb's also held up kind of as a pioneer of color. I don't like this picture. I don't understand why it's in there. I think it's...
Because the cup.
I guess it's the cup.
It's in here because of the cup.
But there's so much better, like, scenes that I just don't find that one a compelling picture.
I agree. Oh yeah,
which is like one out of the 200 pictures in the book or something.
This sort of thing, right? And the fact that this lady on the right is on the top and bottom with a reflection.
Yeah,
it's like, yeah. No, this is much more. Oh yeah, see with the mannequin heads. Oh my gosh. Yeah.
And the one thing that's cool about some of these is that nobody says Alex Webb's not a street photographer, but not a lot, but there's always some pictures included that don't have people. The ones in the middle there are his wife.
Oh, no way.
So they're a very different style. Yeah.
Yeah, I can tell that. I felt that when we got into that middle section. It's like the different thickness of the pages and size.
Yeah.
Interesting. Yeah, that's fun.
But yeah, that's why my opinion doesn't matter on it being silly to shoot sideways, because I will also use a screen, but I don't like shooting with a massive camera. The first time I tried street photography, all I had was a 5D Mark IV and a 24-70.
Yep.
And that's big.
Yep.
And I always felt it was probably partly down to my own way of being in the street, like my own nerves and stuff like that. But I would like kind of think about lifting up the camera. Mm-hmm. And it was almost like, in Inception when the projections go like,
yeah.
It was like that was happening to me.
Oh, that's crazy.
I was like, this big camera. I'm nervous, like new to street photography, and I'm trying to take pictures with this thing, and people would just notice the camera.
That's a funny metaphor.
So
that's
I was like,
real.
The smaller the camera is, the less of that self-consciousness that I felt.
Right.
But over time, I got better at just just chilling out because I'm not hurting anybody and like reading the scene a little bit.
Yeah.
And like if I'm in this scene and I've got I like find nice light and wait here, someone will walk into my frame.
Yeah.
And at that point, they walked into my frame. So I would be a little, I'd be like, if I was taking the picture and they got close and they heard the click, I'd just be like, oh, half the time they'd say sorry to me.
Yeah, right.
And it was, just like, it was like coping mechanisms for nerves while doing street photography.
Interesting. That's part of the reason I want like a ZF. Like just
ZF looks like
the
a lot
form
of fun.
factor and the size and then the perception of what it is. So
I think just for daily stuff, like photographing your family as well, I would rather have something like a ZF.
Yeah.
I think I thought the Q was going to be that, and it's not.
That's what I was going to say is like your Leica cameras kind of fit that aesthetic, but it's like I'm excited about the ZF because of the autofocus, the technology.
Yeah.
You know, it has the Z9 same processor in it, and it's only like $2,000. It's ridiculous to me, you know. But and then I'm looking at your film cameras up behind your head too.
I don't think any of them work.
Yeah, I have had a handful of film cameras that didn't work that I displayed in my office too. You know?
This is all like family who are just like clearing out their closets and they're like, Liam, do you want this camera?
You like cameras? Here you go.
And I'm like, sure, I'll take. I had to start saying no to cameras because I was like, I've got a shelf full of them and I don't need any more. I'm not going to use it.
I still want the one you can look down in.
Like a Rolleiflex.
Yeah, the Rolleiflex. Yeah, so people will be like, oh, he doesn't know what a Rolleiflex is.
Again, the oh my God, what is her name? There was a female photographer who was unknown for many, many years who, Vivian Meyer or Mayer. And she was like a babysitter, but she just took pictures with her Rolleiflex the whole time. And nowadays when you flip your screen and look down at a camera,
it's the same thing.
Like, don't do that. But the Rolleiflex was her way of sort of like getting out of this like almost aggressive motion of putting a camera up to your face. Maybe not her way, it's just the camera she had. But like took amazing pictures by just like looking down at this thing. And
I feel like we keep trying to hit on this idea that it's like in any level of pretentiousness in photography is kind of ill-founded.
Probably
to a certain degree. Yeah. It's like, oh, you pulling out your thing, you're not bringing it up to your eye. It's like, well, the Rolleiflex was that.
Yeah.
You know, it's like, and
you can go back as far as being like, oh, like sometimes there's like, oh, you should be a purist and have like, you have your film camera and you look through your viewfinder. And you know what? In 1930, when someone came out with a camera like this that you could hold up to your eye, professionals were like, that's not real photography.
Yeah, right.
If you're not under a sheet with a box, it's not proper photography.
Yeah, it's like back in the day when, or maybe they were like, oh, that's so cool. You just did something new.
Yeah.
And because they were also innovators with the new technology, they appreciated new technology.
Yeah, and they embrace it.
Well, this is where I get it with like, okay, so it's like, this is a photography podcast, not a guitar podcast, but it's like, yeah, everybody's like Stratton Telly. And I'm like, the very guy who designed these two guitars kept trying to move on and improve on the design, and everybody rejected them over and over again.
Yeah.
It's like he had G&L guitars. He went to work at Music Man. It's like he improved on those designs, but anybody who plays a classic would tell you absolutely not.
Yeah.
Vintage is where it's at. And there's all sorts of other, there's 1,000 different nuances. I almost know those nuances more than any camera nuances, which is funny, but it's like, either this is a technology. We get romantic about eras of the technology, I think, and then if
it's for sure some sort of nostalgia thing.
And if it's different than the thing that we like, then it's something different. You have kids nowadays, Gen Z or whatever, like taking old film or old disposable cameras even, and then creating their aesthetic, you know, and then lining their walls with the coolest kind of stuff. Yeah. And I'm like, it looks like they're straight out of the 90s, but they've never touched the 90s.
Yeah.
You know?
And it's, you know, we all have our opinions on this stuff, but like all these new things that come out, it's just a new way. It's just a new possibility, a new way of maybe doing something, a new way of maybe thinking about something.
It's new and it's
trying
dumb.
Something new. And if
just
you,
kidding.
And it's
just kidding.
Yeah. And if you want to do the old way, because there's like a beauty in that process, and like developing stuff, printing stuff in the darkroom, doing whatever, great.
Anything.
Like, it's just, I love that there's more. And you know what? If we all just adhered to the thing that everybody said you should, then it'd be really boring.
Right.
We'd all be doing the same thing.
Like in my opinion, if you can, whether it's an old style photo, whether it's direct flash, whether it's blurry, whether it's an off-camera flash, whether it's, a medium format, whatever, if you can share your image and I go, whoa, okay, like regardless. So it's like, oh, whoa, that feels like it's straight out of the 90s, or whoa, that's like some super modern crazy thing and the architecture is ridiculous. It's like whatever the whoa is, then I think you've accomplished something. Yeah. And then the other factor of that is like, can you take that thing you've accomplished and then turn it into something repeatable, and can you make a business out of it? It's like, well, why would you do that? Well, because we're hungry.
Sure.
We need to feed our children.
There was when you just mentioned that like people are starting to bring back the older film cameras and make the 90s look of stuff. I think I've been thinking that this is going to happen for years now. But because everything's aging slowly, like the older digital cameras now are starting to be cool again. Yep. So when film becomes more prohibitive and it's just like, old millennials that were doing the film thing, or younger millennials and the older side of Gen Z that were maybe doing the film stuff, people are now being like, oh, we'll use a digicam from the early 2000s because that was 24 years ago. Right.
It's 2 megapixels. Yeah. When this came out, it was $15,000.
So I'm like, that's gonna end up being the next thing. So at some point, there's gonna be a wedding photographer who goes to weddings with a digicam.
And then you have the red eyes.
And then there's going to be all of that stuff. Like man, it must have been like 2004. One of my friends got this little, like, I think it was a cyber shot. I don't know if I think it was maybe Canon that had cyber shot, but it had a flash, and there must have been some setting on it. This has never not been possible with cameras, but the setting on this allowed them to freeze the motion with the flash. Nobody knew what was happening, other than that when you put it on this mode and then take a picture, you could be jumping in the air and you'll be frozen in midair with the flash. So like completely normal thing, but mind-blowing to us, because we didn't even have like cell phones with flashes, or like like none of us knew how to really use a film camera. When you did use film, like the flash didn't, like, you didn't know what it was going to do until you got the picture back, unless you knew something about photography. So this thing, we for hours had this camera set up, and you have to kind of time it a little bit because of the flash, but we would be running down the hall, jumping and getting as horizontal as possible and landing on the couch. And there's just pictures of this couch and then a bunch of horizontal people just like in different positions, or you try and get like in a sitting position. And
now you just edit a video for somebody to go
and then it was just like it was the funniest thing to see yourself like frozen in midair. So like these old cameras that style of early 2000s stuff, which is not that different from the 90s, it's just with a digital point and shoot instead, is, I can for sure see that coming.
It's funny because the mind-blowing thing about flash for me in that era, like 2006 or whatever, was being able to see like a Toy Story blue sky clouds with a well-lit subject. And I was like, how the heck? And then so that was my ambition, was the discovery of how to accomplish that. Yeah, and I remember taking my brother out in our front yard and then sticking a light on an umbrella, and it was in slave mode. I had to see my little pop-up flash so that the off-camera flash would go off. And then with my Nikon D90, or maybe it was a D40 at that point. Everybody says like, oh, they have the 5300s, 5700s. It's like the D40 preceded all of those. And then using slave mode to trigger the flash to light up close enough to my brother at full power in order to see him well exposed against a blue sky. And then I was like, when I accomplished that, it was like, I was so excited.
I never thought about any stuff like that until I was in my late 20s by the time I started even pictures.
I think I was 16 at the time. I thought I was doing this thing, 16 or 17, when I was doing that particular experiment. I remember where we were standing on the sidewalk.
So the second topic on my list. We literally started on.
Is that the one topic?
Bounced into some other.
We're at an hour 58 minutes now.
Yeah, I mean we can stop if you want.
Yeah, it's like I want to hear the
kinda
topic
close to
though, so we can do it
lunchtime.
next time.
Yeah, no, we did. What did we? We did influences and copying people. We talked a bit about cameras and stuff, but I feel like that could go on forever.
Yeah, we can.
We talked about film versus digital, so that was kind of like we bounced into that topic.
Yep.
Digicams are coming back. Oh yeah, I just kind of bounced into that
I
one.
like that one.
What else? Yeah, we talked about pricing.
Oh yeah, I feel like there's still more to talk about in that context, but
Yeah, photo video. Yeah, loads of stuff. I got stuff like more practical business stuff, like using AI culling. Does the gear really matter?
oh yeah, AI is a massive topic.
Things we love and hate about weddings. I feel like we could make that.
Talk about that for a long time.
Yeah,
It's funny. I
feel
blot
like-
out all like the negative things, and so people say, "Oh, what's the craziest thing you've seen at a wedding?" I'm like, honestly, I think a blot, and then a memory will pop into my head. I'm like, "Yep, not safe for the podcast." Actually,
I don't think I've even seen that much crazy stuff. Like I've seen people get drunk and like take their shirts off and
I'll tell you when we turn off the record button.
okay. Yeah, I've never seen. And I've definitely heard like wild stories on like podcasts about like grooms cheating on the brides and all that sort of
crazy.
stuff. Or like there was like a second photographer that hooked up with the groom
Yeah, I heard
at a
about
later
that.
date, and then they tried to like get a refund from the first photographer or something.
Yeah, and the first I was like, "That's not on me,
Like, this
dude."
was
It's like,
nothing
but
to
I'll
do with
sleep
me,
with
but
the
then-
bride if you want, or something like that,
Jeez.
just to get back at the groom.
But like they hired the second photographer, so like you'd probably feel a little responsible in some way, but you're not responsible.
yeah, but
really
that's
for
like,
their actions.
like
but you
because
hired
other
that
people
person.
were being immoral and
Yeah.
awful, and your husband's sucks.
also did a really bad thing. Yeah,
Like, bro, that's on.
yeah.
on
No,
both
the
of them.
husband should give the bride the money back,
God, yeah, right.
if anything.
Right? Like, bro.
Yeah, there's plenty of. I'm sure
Yeah,
there's
those-
plenty of stuff we could find to have.
Yeah,
like
I don't
a
have any
juicy
that-
gossip episode one
Yeah,
time.
mine's not that level of drama, but it's just gross enough to where I don't want that client to hear.
Fair. Starting and running a photo business.
There's a couple. There's
Self
a couple fun
doubt,
stories.
imposter syndrome. Like,
Oh, we have so many good topics for future podcasts.
yeah.
Oh, no,
Talking
this
about
is
engagement session stuff. I was like, we should talk about family photos. Like, what's important about those?
Oh yeah, that's a big one. Speaking of shooting wide
Things
open
like that.
and getting people angry because I'm shooting wide open.
Oh, really?
Yeah, like, well, I'm sure other photographers would have a commentary, but I've never had a complaint in like all of 6 years I've been shooting wide open or whatever
Yeah.
with my family photos. Autofocus is so good, dog. And then when you layer people
Oh,
on
yeah.
the same line, if I ever have people behind the other, then I'd break out an ultra wide. If there's that many people and we
Yeah.
do a big group shot at like F whatever.
Yeah, I always find I can safely shoot
F
at,
whatever
like
is my
2.8
favorite.
if I'm doing a group
Yeah.
shot because you're far enough back
2.8, yeah.
and like 35mm 2.8.
Yeah, F
probably.
whatever is my preferred f stop.
Yeah. Yeah, like
Yeah,
the
word.
orange interiors of Colorado and
Ooh,
lighting
yeah.
for that crap because that's one of the more frustrating.
Well, if you notice my
Things.
oranges and reds in my edits, I'm kind of really excited about all of these red rocks that we have here and all that. But yeah, no, we have good stuff for another podcast in the future too. So I guess we can sign off on this one.
Yeah, it's about lunchtime anyways.
Until the next time.
Cheers, mate.
Done. It's funny as we were talking, I was like, oh, there's some things that I'd probably be like, oh, we can move on from that. I don't really care to, if I'm listening to listen to that, but I'm sure it's like, you just post it.
Yeah, I think that's I took that approach with YouTube.
Yeah.
I was just like, I tried to make this video. I think that I lost some stuff in the middle and maybe cut out some